Welcome to the Westside Investors Network, WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. This is the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast for real estate professionals by real estate professionals. This show is focused on the next step in your career, investing. Thank you for listening. And please, if you like our content, rate us on your podcast provider. Just a quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any shares or securities, make or consider any investments, or take any other action. All right. Today we've got Kaaren Hall with us. Kaaren, thanks so much for coming on the show. Why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, you don't wake up one day and say, wow, I want to self-direct some IRAs. I think I'll open a company. It's not like that. But my background, frankly, after spending 17 years as a radio announcer, made the logical decision to go into real estate to make some money. So while I was kind of doing both at the same time, and I got a real estate license, did that for like a year. I was actually a realtor, but then got into property management. And just as I was going along through life, I got into mortgage loan servicing, loan origination. That lasted a while. And then we had the Great Recession, right? And so of course, mortgages weren't going to work. So I got into self-directed IRAs in 2007 with a company for a couple years, broke away, and in 2009 opened uDirect IRA Services. There you go. So we've got 1.2 billion under management, and we're just helping a lot of people self-direct and, taking what they have and investing outside of Wall Street, which is so great because there's, more power to choose. So that is me.
It's awesome. And maybe just so our audience knows, like, what the term self-directed IRA, like, how is that different than some of the other more common IRAs and 401ks? And maybe just kind of a little background on that for everyone so we're all on the same diction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because a lot of people don't know that. So IRAs were created in 1974, and in 1975, Gerald Ford was president, that when they went into effect. So it created 1975, this IRA. So it's like just over 50 years you've had an IRA. You could always self-direct this IRA because at that time, they said, hey, look, the only thing you can't invest in is life insurance contracts and collectibles. Everything else is just fine. So from day one of having IRAs, from the day they were created in 1975, your IRA could have bought a house, for example, like a rental property, and those renters could have paid your IRA the rent. Your IRA that day could have made a loan, a secured or unsecured, to someone. They would have paid those payments back to your IRA. Or, of course, we didn't have cryptocurrency 50 years ago, but precious metals, all this, you could, all these alternative asset classes. You could, syndications, for whatever state they were in 50 years ago. But I mean, they've always had syndications, right, of some sort, because how old was Ponzi? I mean, that's going back to like the 20s. That was a syndication. So you've always been able to use your IRA to do this, but people just didn't know for the longest time. I think, though, that like when people really started to know what these were is in the Great Recession when you couldn't get a loan. Remember that? How like the cap was how many bank loans you could get on mortgage? Now it's like 10. You can have 10 loans on real estate, but then they narrowed it to 6. And I'm an investor. How am I going to get capital? And then investors started realizing, like in our space, I can go to self-directed IRAs, get a loan from a self-directed IRA holder and use that for my deal, or I can take my retirement money and I can take down this deal without getting a bank loan. So it was about 2009 when I opened uDirect, Great Recession. Remember buying properties on tape? Were you doing that? Like you could get 50 properties sight unseen on a bank's. They give you a tape and you just buy them.
Go deals.
Kind of scary, but you could do it. And people made a lot of money that way in those days.
Yeah. So with a self-directed IRA, there needs to be a trustee, right? To essentially oversee or make sure that the compliance is met, or can you explain that?
Yeah, I would call it a custodian. Yeah. There has to be, and that's that. We provide that, and because of course you're not going to take personal possession of your asset, because if you did, that would be a prohibited transaction.
Okay, and like, has it always been that way? You were mentioning in 1975, that you could buy a property and have your tenants pay your rent. Like, to me, the way that sounded, it sounded like it was a lot more simple. Like, you could just open up a bank account and
No,
um,
no,
no, it's
it was
always
never like that.
custodian.
Yeah, that was never like that. But an IRA has always had a custodian tied to it. So the custodian would they would have to be willing to custody an alternative asset. But that existed, and it was only really the uber rich at the time that understood that this even existed. People who had tax strategy attorneys, helping them out. But then again, it's become more commonplace as time goes forward.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, as they've switched jobs too, they had leftover 401ks and they roll them over into an IRA or a self-directed IRA. And, kind of as Chris mentioned, the number one no is like, you can't quote unquote actively manage the asset that is owned by the IRA. So you need to have
you're right. But just to give you some hope there, a little ray of hope here. There's some things that you can do. You can choose the renter. You select the property, you can choose the renter. A lot of people don't write checks anymore, but you pick up and collect the check. And as long as you never took personal possession, as long as it never went in your bank account, you could then just send that check into the custodian, into your account. And you can hire third-party vendors. So you really can kind of property manage an IRA-owned house in this way, as long as you don't take personal possession of the money. You can do that.
If you have like a property management accountant software that directly puts the money from the renter to the IRA account, you're saying you could just do the management for it?
You could. So as long as it was arm's length, that's the thing about IRAs. Everything you do has to be arm's length. So if you're managing your own property, you're calling that plumber to come out and fix that toilet, and you can do that with an IRA. You could never take a management fee, I have to add, because there was a whole court case about that, and the guy lost and had prohibited transactions is a bad thing. Let's like keep away from prohibited transactions, the whole self-directed IRA game. But yeah, so you wouldn't even need special software, because if you're just sending an ACH, it doesn't really matter where it goes. It's just going to an account. It doesn't have to be special. So just send that money over to the custodian to be posted in your account.
I've always thought that you couldn't manage or work on a property that would be, that would be prohibited.
Yeah, I mean, managing it and working on it are different things.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
we take IRA investments into our syndications all the time, and I believe that we've been advised that we can't use our own IRAs to invest in our syndications, even
that's
though
true.
The money never, it goes from essentially the tenants directly to the IRA.
I'll explain. Like prohibited transactions, like for those who are listening in rule books, you can read about it in the Internal Revenue Code. It's IRC 4975. So I'll throw this in the chat. IRC.
Great evening reading.
Yeah, and yeah, right. I mean, that's super exciting. But what it says is different things can be prohibited. So one is offering services to the plan. And if you're out there as the general partner and you've got limited partners, as a general partner, you're making decisions and you're offering services to the plan. So that makes you disallowed. So what's also a prohibited transaction is having personal benefit from your IRA assets. So as a GP, if you make a profit, you're actually receiving personal benefit from your IRA investment. So it's like a double prohibited transaction because you're offering services to the plan and getting money.
But if it's a partnership, or if you're a minority partner of an entity,
same. You're the decision maker, so no.
Okay.
The IRA holds just a single family house in as would the custodian or the IRA hold the title?
It's one and the same. So it's yeah. So yeah.
So the custodian or the IRA could hold the title, and then all the funds go directly to the custodian to deposit in the IRA account.
Right. So the name of the investor is the IRA account. It's not the person. So it's like, for example, it's it's like you guys for the benefit of the custodian, and that's who owns the asset. So AJ for the benefit of the custodian, and there you go. And that is a name. It's not your personal name that owns the asset. It's the IRA name that owns the asset that includes the name of the custodian.
On this premise, suitable to the management yourself, like if you had a plumber go work on the place, like how would you get the plumber paid?
Super. Well, right now, things have changed over the years. Like for us, we've gone digital. So you would log into the platform, submit the invoice for the plumber, and we would disperse from your account.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that is easy.
Yeah. That makes it a little bit easier. I was usually, it's we pay them as a management company and then we get paid from the owner from properties and that sort of stuff, which, if you're buying like a property out of state and you're using you can use another manager, like that makes it very easy, I think. And then, because then you're never, as long as you're not like touching the funds, right? That's kind of the concept.
Yes.
Or making decisions.
Yeah, right. So it's called offering services to the plan. So if you're the decision maker, if in other words, like you're making all the decisions and you're getting paid for it, and you own the entity, and it's too closely held. When it's like that, when you're so close to the deal, you become a disallowed person. It's a broad term, isn't it? It's offering services to the plan.
So would like a value add single family home work where you did, say you bought it for $200K and you put a 50 or $100K into it through like a general contractor? Would that be? Because you're essentially telling the general contractor what to do.
Well, I think that as long as your IRA is paying the bills, you can hire that third party GC and have them come in and do the work.
Yeah.
No problem. Is the IRA pays for all expenses of the assets that the IRA owns.
Okay. Yeah. Well, very interesting. I know that you mentioned earlier you wanted to chat about the big, beautiful bill and all the wonderful things that it has brought. I don't know that I've heard much about this yet, so I am kind of excited.
Yeah, it's still on the foreground. It's like distant thunder that we're hearing now. It's not really in our backyard yet. So, but the big, beautiful bill, Trump passed it because, Trump's a real estate investor, isn't he? So he is saying, let's put some alternative assets in 401ks. Why can't 401ks invest in alternatives? And by not just 401ks, but technically like a 457, 403B, these different kinds of plans that are employer plans. And so what I'm hearing today, I sit on the board of directors for our industry. It's a group called RITA, the Retirement Industry Trust Association. Okay, so we have lobbyists out on the street and on the Hill, and they're talking to the lawmakers. So they tell us what's going on. So basically, the thing about the big, beautiful bill isn't that when you have a 401k, you're going to be able to use it like a self-directed IRA. You're not going to be able to take your 401k with your employer and go buy a house. It's not like that. But it would be different. It would be just like these accounts can invest right now in like mutual funds. With the 401k, what they're looking at, the big, beautiful bill, is having these investors invest what they're calling it a sleeve of assets. That's the term, a sleeve of assets, which is just like a mutual fund. So it's a whole bunch of alternatives wrapped up into a package, and you're investing in this whole package of assets. So you're a syndicator. Maybe you get one of these, institutional custodians to take on your asset and put it into one of these sleeves of assets. That could be beneficial. But here's the thing. So say you work, like you're at Home Depot and you work at Home Depot and you may not be an accredited investor, right? So if I want to invest in your syndication, I have to be an accredited investor. So how can my 401k invest in alternative assets if I have to be accredited? So to get past that hurdle, they're saying that in this case, the institutional custodian is going to act as that, as that accredited investor. And so you'll be able to invest in the assets through them.
That's a big hurdle that can be removed, and a lot of compliance. We do 506B syndication, so we can take on non-accredited investors. But for those guys doing 506C, being able to just say, hey, get hooked up with this custodian, and then you'll be able to invest. That's a lot of red tape.
And the way it stands now, if you've got a 401k, and by the way, this thing hasn't come out yet, so all this isn't in cement yet. But so we'll see how it actually rolls, because they have all these ideas, they mull them around, and then they release something. But if you have a 401k where you work now, when you leave that employer, then you can put it in a self-directed IRA, then you can self-direct. So two different things with your employer, outside the employer.
Oh, I mean, it kind of sounds like it's like a mini REIT of some sorts where like you may have one syndicator that's got multiple different syndications, or it's a fund that's got a portfolio of properties, or it's like a bunch of different syndicators. And that's kind of interesting. Would there just be shares of that particular like quote unquote fund?
Right, just like a mutual fund. That's how they're looking to design it today.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
So we'll see. Yeah.
Well,
Hasn't come
super
out
cool.
yet.
Well, the other thing that I did want to talk about on here, which we kind of started talking about, was the IRA to Roth conversion. This is something that's piqued my interest lately. It's just, when it first was described to me, I was like, wow, that could be an incredible savings. So I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to feel good about describing it. So Kaaren, can you kind of walk us through like what that process is and what it accomplishes?
I mean, in the bottom line, it's a simple process and it's not a lot of brain damage. But if you have pre-tax funds like a traditional IRA or maybe a SEP IRA or something, or you have an old 401k, you roll it over and they're pre-tax dollars, you want to turn that into Roth. What you have to do is, one, open a Roth account. So there's a place to put those dollars. But also you're going to get a valuation on the asset. So if it's cash, we know the value. It doesn't have to be evaluated. If it's a non-cash asset like a syndication, you need it to be valued. So what you do is you basically talk to your custodian. Hey, I have this asset in my account. It's like maybe a syndication, and I want to convert that to Roth. And they'll say, great, well, give us a valuation. And so they say the valuator says that your $100,000 syndication's only worth 50. It could be anything, we don't know. But in this case, we say now it's worth 50. So you would convert $50,000 of value from the traditional to the Roth, whatever the valuator says the value is at. And then what you would do is receive a 1099 for that tax year at the amount of the value of the asset that was converted. So it takes a valuation. You open a Roth account, takes a valuation, and you'll get a 1099 and it'll be taxed.
So if somebody has a 401k and then they leave that company, then they can roll the 401k to, an IRA, but that'll be a traditional IRA. And you're talking about, and then they can self-direct those funds, place them into syndications, and then convert it to a Roth, with the hopes that the valuator values those syndications at less than what you
never know how, you're rolling the dice on where the valuation is going to come in. But and one thing that's really important too is there is a lot of, we call Roth fraud, of people undervaluing assets in a conversion. So I don't think the IRS has a lot of people doing audits these days, but that would be a low hanging fruit for an auditor, is to take a look at a Roth conversion and see if an asset was like undervalued significantly. So you just want to make sure if it's a lot, but that's why you get a valuation. You get a third party to say, I looked at this asset, this is what it's worth. So it's a third party valuator giving you that value. It's not a stated value.
Yeah, and the reason that the appraiser will give you less of a value is because once you've invested in the syndication, there's a length of term that's going to run. So the market has a lack of liquidity. Like you can't just ask for your money back the next day. Like if you invest in the stock market, you can get your money back within a couple days or something like that. It's very liquid. And then there's a lack of marketability. Like if you do want to sell it, not only does it have to be like usually approved by the general partnership, but then you have to find someone else that's interested in buying it. And there's not a lot of, accredited investors that are out there looking to buy other people's syndications too.
That's even
right now.
That's even if it's allowed by the syndication.
True.
The operator can say, sorry, we vetted you. We're not going to vet the person that you want to sell to. So yeah,
there's definite basis for having it be worth less until it performs. And so, even though like in your scenario where you purchase $100,000 worth of shares, all of those shares move over into the Roth, but at a value that's less. So instead of paying $100,000 in, not paying $100,000, but having $100,000 of taxes due, it's like $50,000 of revenue for taxes due, which, I mean, to me seems like, at that 100K mark is probably $15,000 to $20,000 savings from moving it. And I think one of the other detriments too is that you have to have that extra cash in your personal account to pay those taxes. You can't remove that money from the syndication or from your traditional IRA to pay those extra taxes. Like that's going to be an extra burden that you're going to have to wear going forward in that year.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. We see a lot of people doing Roth conversions though. Year end, boy, we're just up to here with Roth conversions, people trying to get it before year end for the tax year. But Roth dollars, I mean, that's the brass ring, isn't it? Having assets ultimately growing tax-free for life. That's pretty cool. So once you have a Roth IRA and you've had a Roth IRA for at least 5 years, and as long as you reach, so you've had a Roth for 5 years, you're 59 and a half or older, then you can take those, you can take that money out, those proceeds out tax-free. So it's just huge, a huge retirement boost.
Well, my understanding too with the Roth is that you can actually take out the funds that you put in as that are already tax dollars. So right. If you move that 50K over and then you have, say, 150K gain on it, you can pull that 50 back out into your personal account tax-free from the Roth and leave just the gains in there. Like somebody described it to me as it's like eating cake. It's like you take out first what you put in that's already taxed, and then it's like the gains and then the gains upon the gains or something like that.
Well, yeah. So to kind of break that down, it's like the contributions you've already paid tax on. When you contribute to a Roth, it's after tax dollars, so you already paid the tax. So so those contributions can be pulled out tax free. It's not really tax free because you already paid tax on it. So that is something that you can do, but it's your contributions that come out that way.
I always thought that was kind of interesting, especially. With that, like couple that with the traditional to Roth conversion is like, that's a way to free, if you have, a significant amount in that, pre-tax dollar account, then that's a way to get access to some cash at a lesser value and then leave the proceeds in that Roth to like grow.
Not really. Yeah, not really. I mean, let's think about it. Did you already pay tax? So it's not the, if you converted assets, they're not contributions. It's just an asset. Does that make sense? Because you paid tax on the contribution.
It's on the $50,000 valuation, right? So when that goes and sells, the syndication sells, say it makes 200K after 5 years. So then you can take out that 50K that it sold because you paid taxes on it already.
On the appraised amount, the converted,
I see where your train of logic is going.
That was my understanding of it.
Yeah. This is where I have to say, talk to a tax person. We're not.
All right. Let's change subject slightly. All right. So, what about someone who, let's say that they have a couple of young children and they want to start planning for their kids. What do you believe the best way to, I guess, because AJ and I, we don't have this huge IRA or 401k because we've been self-employed our whole lives to direct. Whereas, I'd like to set that up for my kids, and I'm sure that other people would like to set that up for their children too. And so, do you have like a roadmap or like a plan that might help someone doing a little planning for their kids?
Yeah, I did this with my kids. So what they would do, I mean, they were, when I opened uDirect, they're, in like middle school. And so what I did, had them help me with marketing. I would send out marketing postcards. So they would be my marketing assistants and they'd be stamping and labeling the postcards, right? So I could pay them to do that, say like $5,000 a year to do this service for the company, this marketing service. And so in order to contribute, you can only contribute from earned income. And so that was their earned income. And so that amount equaled a Roth contribution in their case. And so that's how we did it with the kids. It has to be like a bona fide job for the kids. I know that there's one thing that people like to say, a modeling fee and so that's also something you want to talk about with your tax advisor if that's really going to work. I've heard both sides of that argument. But in this case, the kids were doing real marketing and they got paid and they took their paycheck and they put it all in their Roth IRA. And now they're older and they have jobs and they're adults. And so now they've got big Roths, which is really cool. So that it's nice to kind of get them started with some assets, as they head out into the world.
Cool. Yeah. Figured that out early.
There's a max contribution to the Roth per year, right?
Yeah.
And so
doesn't that getting increased?
Yeah. It did. It got every year. Yeah. Yeah. Every year it gets increased. And so it just got increased from 7. Let me find it right here. Cause I want to put a link in the chat so you can share it with all the listeners so they can see the contributions for really all these different kinds of assets. But so here we go. Here it is. In fact, let me just share my screen. I think that would also work because we can just look at this whole table that I have created. And so I just need to be able to share my screen if it's okay. There we go. So here it is. So this is
Karen's website, uDirectIRA.com. And then I think there's a contribute to account page.
So you see how over the years, back in 2008, $5,000 was the cap that you could contribute as long as you had that much earned income. But something interesting happened this year, 2026, is that for people who are 50 and above, there's always been what we call a catch-up contribution, so that when you're a little older, maybe you haven't saved so much, you can contribute a little bit more to help your retirement. It's always been $1,000, and it just changed to $1,100. So if you're under 50, you can contribute $7,500, but if you're over 50, it's not, it's $8,600 is the amount, including that $1,100 what we call catch-up contribution.
Kaaren, with our previous example, is there any limit to the amount of conversion you can do from a traditional to an IRA? So that's unlimited.
It's unlimited. So some things in IRAs are unlimited, like conversion. What's also unlimited is how many assets an IRA can hold. One IRA can hold an unlimited number of assets. There's also no limit to how much an asset in an IRA can grow. I mean, ask Peter Thiel, right? He had this multi-million-dollar IRA. So there's no limit to those things. But what there is a limit on is how much you can contribute. There's a cap on that. But you can open an unlimited number of accounts too. You could have 50 traditional IRAs, but your contribution limit is, like, for example, one $7,500 contribution spread over every IRA that you own. So I don't know if you'd want to own 50 IRAs, but you could, because there's no limit on how many accounts you can have.
So what are some other opportunities to getting funds to self-directed?
Right. I think really to get the money in the account, it's making a personal contribution based upon your account type and your age and your income.
Well, there's IRAs so that's what we're talking about.
The account types.
And there's different account types and different limits that can be contributed, and if you're planning on, if you have an old 401k, that can be rolled over. If you have, if you're self-employed, there's other options.
And now here's a word from our sponsor. Get things done while you're on the move. Learn more about working with a virtual assistant through Offsite Professionals. It's a great way to get all the things done that you need to get done. Have freedom in your time and streamline your life by automating your business. Stop spending time on the tasks that you can delegate and start spending more time on your superpower. Call us today at 503-446-3177 or visit our website at offsiteprofessionals.com.
Uptown Syndication is now offering a syndication coaching program for you to take your real estate portfolio to the next level. This is your opportunity to have experienced syndicators, AJ and Chris Shepard, coach you on your way to controlling your real estate investing future. Our coaching program will provide you with the tools and framework needed to begin syndicating real estate in your target market. Go to uptownsyndication.com today to learn more.
Hey, let me ask you, what if tax season was actually exciting? I know, it sounds crazy, but not when you've got the right playbook. At mymoneyworksforme.com, we put together the Pro Tax Strategies playbook that real estate professionals use that you may not know about. You'll learn how to crush taxes with depreciation and rep status, how to stack smart write-offs from the Augusta rule to vehicles, and the ultimate wealth hack, 1031 exchanges and vacation rentals. It's free, it's powerful, and it's waiting for you at mymoneyworksforme.com, because your money should work as hard as you do.
There are. So let's look like, so here's the Roth, and that just kind of, I'll just throw that out there, because if you make, say if you're married filing jointly and you make more than about around 242,000, that is, you won't be able to contribute to a Roth at all. So you could make too much money to even contribute to a Roth. Now there's the 401k, which we have at work, and this is the employee contribution portion. Just to say that this year, if you're under 50, it's 24,500. But if you're 50 plus, it's 32,500. Okay. So now there's the SEP IRA. Now the SEP IRA is a really great employer plan. It's a kind of an employer plan. You can have your self-employed. It's incredibly inexpensive as opposed to having a full-blown 401k for your employees. You could contribute for your own, up to a max of 72,000. So it's a lesser of 25% of your income, up to a cap of $72,000 a year. And you can also have SEP IRAs for all your employees. And then as an employer, you would make contributions to their accounts based on the percentage of their income and on the same kind of scale. But there's a simple IRA, which is, we hardly have any of these anymore because the SEP just blew it out of the water. I can't believe it still exists because we barely have any. It's a very unpopular account because the contribution limits aren't as high. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles, but it exists.
Can you describe a little bit more about the SEP? That's not something I've definitely heard of it, but I'm not super familiar with like that vehicle. Can you kind of describe a little bit more how it works?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's an acronym, obviously, like everything in the government, right? So it's a simplified employee pension. And so it's kind of like how like an Expedition is built on the chassis of a Ford F-150. Am I right? Right. So that's what I know about cars. You just said everything I know about cars right there. But the SEP IRA is built on the traditional IRA chassis, so to speak. Okay. So it's got the same platform, but with more bells and whistles. And the bells and whistles mean that a SEP IRA, pre-tax SEP IRA, acts just like a traditional IRA in every way except with higher contributions. And you also have the benefit of having this as an employer plan and offering it to your employees.
Is there any hoops you have to jump through in order to like get the money in there or qualify for it, or is it it literally just like replace the simple IRA and there's no reason not to have it?
I would totally have. There's also a solo 401k, which is this describes the employee portion of a solo 401k. That's another employer plan. But with a SEP IRA, no, you simply open the account, and you always work in tandem with your tax advisor, because it's a circular calculation how they're going to figure out the taxes. So what they're going to do is say, okay, how much do you make? How much can you contribute to a SEP? They're going to determine that. And as they're filing your taxes, plug in that deduction and make sure that that's, and make sure that you get the maximum benefit of a SEP contribution if you're trying to max out a SEP contribution. But there's the cap, 72,000.
And you couldn't set up SEP and 401k. It's kind of one or the other, right?
You could have, it has a control group, and you can have, well, you can have a traditional and you can have a solo K at the same time.
Yeah.
Now there's an HSA too that you can self-direct. So let's talk about that. It's a health savings plan, a health savings account. And it's pretty cool that it's self-directable. And it is a health savings plan that you would have where you work. So if you have, we call HDHP, high deductible health plan at work, you've got an account within that high deductible health plan, a savings account, and you can invest those dollars. And it's super cool because the money goes in pre-tax. So you don't pay tax on the money that goes in. The money that's in there as it's growing and it's being invested in, as the investment is growing in value, that increase in value is not being taxed. And as long as you use those proceeds, those funds for a certain list of medical expenses that are pre-approved, the money comes out tax-free too. And as you see, the amount you can put in per year is pretty small, but it really ticks all the boxes on tax savings.
When it comes to, all of these accounts, I mean, are you able to, let's say you want an HSA and a traditional IRA, can you have both of those accounts? I guess I'm just wondering, okay, I can contribute $7,500 to an IRA, and my family, I can do $8,700 for an HSA. Can we take that 17,000 and invest in a syndication?
Yes.
But it would be two different accounts, two separate checks.
Yes. But as long as you invest concurrently, you can do that.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So there is a solo 401k. I believe that SEP IRA is only for self-employed income. Is that correct?
It's okay. There is always a company that's going to sponsor the plan. Let's start there. So to create a plan, there's the underlying, the foundation is somebody who's self-employed. Okay. But that self-employed person can have employees. And so those employees they can participate in the SEP that the business owner created. Okay. So again, the foundation is a business owner with a business. Now, what the employee actually does, and it's interesting, is they create actually a traditional account, or they could actually, here's another thing this changed, where now you can actually put Roth dollars in a SEP. Okay, that'll blow your mind. I can go there. We separate topic, but so your employee, you're the employer, you've created the SEP, the foundation, and you're going to be making contributions to your employees' accounts. Those can be regular, traditional, or Roth accounts.
Interesting. And so there's just so much nuance to, I mean, and then, it's okay, from a real estate perspective, if your main income is in your main job is being a real estate professional, the amount of income is pretty well reduced by the amount of depreciation that you get. And so it's tough. I haven't spent that much time in it because there's just so many tax benefits from real estate that and AJ and I, we're not at the point in our careers where we are where we've stopped buying assets to get depreciation. And so But once
We've-
we
we've
do
always-
stop getting assets, then this stuff starts getting really important.
We've always said if we stop buying, then we're going to have to start paying taxes.
Straight
Or
up.
figuring out these complicated vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you make such a good point, because real estate is just like the best thing in the world for tax breaks, isn't it? For personally. But the thing of it is, you've got personal money, you've got retirement money, and you want to invest both, sets of dollars, the tax protected dollars and your personal dollars. And so, I'm a real estate investor, and I invest both ways too, but it depends upon, you look at the deal and you look at the numbers. So does it make more sense to buy real estate with your personal, not retirement dollars? Yeah, a lot of times it really does, for what you said, depreciation and so many different things. But when you consider that you've got this pile, of retirement dollars, how are you going to also invest those? And what are you going to do? So is buying brick and mortar real estate, the actual building, does that make the most sense for those dollars? Or is there a different asset class that makes more sense for you with your retirement dollars that are tax protected, where you don't get depreciation, where you don't get to take advantage of those things? So again, the overarching thing here that we keep getting back to is how important it is to have a good CPA, because like anything, you guys wouldn't do a single thing if you didn't have a plan. Am I right? I mean, you start with a plan. So you build a plan with your CPA. I have these dollars. This is what I want to do. How do I max out what I have? So the self-directed IRA lets you invest in alternative assets. It's a vehicle to let you do that. What's best for you is a conversation between you and your advisors. Make sense?
Yeah.
But it's cool. You don't have to just rely on the stock market. And one of the things too that our account holders invest in is by the way, syndications for our entire industry is the #1 asset class. Like across the board, every self-directed IRA company, syndications are the #1 asset that our account holders invest in. But you can also now invest in other things. Well, now there's crypto, and that's going nuts. And precious metals are through the roof, aren't they? Maybe you want to buy low and sell high. It's at an all-time historical high right now. But you can invest in precious metals with a self-directed IRA. And then in the middle of that, where you can still talk about real estate, and then you're thinking about, well, if I invest in real estate with my personal dollars, I get more tax benefits. But what about this with a self-directed IRA? Like my self-directed IRA makes a loan to you guys so you can buy a property. And then you pay my IRA, you pay the loan back to my IRA. If I made a loan to you, I wouldn't get a tax break personally, right? But my IRA can loan you money, you can pay my IRA back. And that's how that works. And those dollars come back to me in my IRA, tax-free in a Roth or tax deferred. So real estate is still involved in that scenario.
Yeah.
Without losing that depreciation benefit, right?
I mean, from the debt side, like even hard money loans, investing in a hard money loan syndication or a debt fund.
Yeah.
Those debt funds don't provide the same depreciation that a traditional asset would. And so that's very interesting.
Yeah. So put your retirement dollars in there. You're not going to get depreciation anyway. And, maybe put your retirement dollars there, if that makes sense for you.
One thing I do got to bring up or ask about is forget the acronym, but it's the unrelated business taxes. It UBITs or something?
Yes. UBIT and UDFI, sure.
I waited till the end, so if anyone's listening now, but this is, I've never quite understood these. Can you give us a understanding of what they are?
Sure. I want to put something in the chat. So irs.gov is the IRS's website, okay? And if you want to talk about UBIT and UDFI, this is where you find it. irs.gov publication 598. So there's the rule book. Okay. So if you want to dig in deep later, that's where you find it. What these taxes are, unrelated business income tax is sort of an umbrella term. They're basically the taxes are the same amount. But if your IRA, say, buys a house and borrows money to buy that house, the proceeds that the IRA earns because of leverage are subject to the UDFI tax. So I'll explain. Just to use some easy numbers. You find a house, it's $100,000, which we know you can't buy a tool shed at the Home Depot for that, right? but say you did $100,000 for a house, your IRA has 70 grand in it. You borrow 30 grand and your IRA acquires this $100,000 property. And now you get a rent check, it's $1,000. Now, of that $1,000 of proceeds you just got from your IRA owned asset, 30% of those proceeds were earned because of debt, right? And so it's that 30% that was earned because of debt that's subject to that UDFI tax. And that's how that works. And the tax is, I mean, it's not small. It's, again, you want your tax person in on this, right? It could be between 17 and 37%. It's based on the trust rate. And that varies from time to time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so,
that's another reason that, IRAs do very well at the debt. Is because when they're placed as debt, it's not, there's none of this like leverage or anything else. Like they are the leverage, and that higher interest rate, acts more like rent as opposed to like appreciation.
Yeah, how like you and I, when we invest in real estate personally, I mean, debt is our friend. It's great, but when we invest with our IRA, it's going to lead to this tax when we make money. If we sold the property and made a profit, we'd be taxed UDFI, and the UDFI sticks around a year and a day after the property sells. Any proceeds that come in after that, or after the debt's paid off. I mean to say, so there you go. It's something to consider. It can be a deterrent to actually. I don't know. People will do that to get the asset and to acquire the asset because they have some other play in mind, like a long-term hold. And then UBIT, unrelated business income tax. That is, if an IRA invests in an active business, then the unrelated business income tax comes in. So say, for example, I'll tell you like where it started, where they came up with this. It's like the Catholic Church, where so many things start. Say the Catholic Church has a bakery, and then like Joe's got a bakery, right? And so the Catholic Church, they're tax exempt, like an IRA is tax exempt. So they can sell their donuts for less because they're not paying tax. But Joe, he's got to pay tax, so he has to charge more for his donuts. That's not really fair. So it's a tax. I don't know if the church actually faces this tax, but it's a bump up for these guys over here, so that the price, so that now it's even competition with Joe. You see, that kind of a thing. So that's how it was explained to me in my early self-directing years.
So I think that when it comes to syndications, UBIT is the thing. I haven't heard of the UDFI, and I wasn't aware. Does the UDFI tax come into play on a syndication when it's a highly leveraged asset?
Yes, it does. So if you've got a syndication and part of the capital stack is leverage, and you've got an equity investor, an IRA equity investor in your deal, that IRA equity investor is going to get the pass-through experience of a UDFI tax based on how much they earned. And so that's usually reported on the K-1.
Interesting. And so, but that it only really happens on the sale, correct? Or is that something that is supposed to be calculated
it would be calculated every year.
Well, Chris, it's like the information's on the K-1, but the personal tax accountant custodian has to apply it, right?
Apply it?
Everyone's tax situation is different, and like every account is different. Like we provide K-1s and give information to the owners; they go do their own taxes with it. So everyone's responsible for reporting those.
Yeah, and I should say, like today we've had this great conversation, and a lot of it is really out of my wheelhouse. And I can tell you what I know, but when it comes to tax advice, you have to talk to you talk to a CPA. And my CPA is Amanda Hahn from Keystone CPA. She's brilliant. She knows all these things. So don't start without talking to an actual tax professional when you're creating your overarching investing plan. But yes, UDFI tax can pass through to an equity investor in a syndication.
Do you think Amanda would be able to handle a complex 1031 for our CPA just threw up his hands. We did a 1031 and he basically said, "Oh no, I can't handle this."
Really?
Yeah. He's like, because we sold a syndication, half the people wanted to stay in and half wanted to leave. And so we had to chop up the entity.
We did a drop every investor out that wanted their money, and then we swapped over everyone.
Well, I put Amanda's email in the chat. Yeah. So ask her. I mean, she's been doing this a long time, so.
We are getting to the end here, so I think it's a good stopping point to start our 4 questions. And I'm going to start you off with the first one, which is, what's one piece of advice you would give to your 25-year-old self?
Well, first, don't worry so much. It all works out. That's the first thing. But I think that, as far as investing, it's start now and don't spend your savings. Really, really, truly save them, because just to the power, what did Einstein say? Like one of the great wonders of the world is compound interest. And you'd be surprised that when you start saving at a young age, you do such a benefit for yourself by letting that money just sit there and grow for you. So I would just have started investing sooner. And you don't have to be a big investor. Just keep putting the money in. That's what I would have told myself.
Build the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. What was your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
I started a company when I was in the mortgage industry called Kaaren for Mortgage. And I was like an independent mortgage broker and going out and making deals. And this was just before the crash. So it wasn't a long-lived business, because then nobody was making loans for a while. It was pre-self-directed IRAs, but that was my first step into it. And I didn't understand. And the CPA that set up a C Corp for me. Like, why a C Corp? That's wrong. And so many, I didn't even know, but now I know what I didn't know then. I didn't last very long because of the market, but now, well, in 2009, I opened uDirect IRA Services, and that's been nothing but a learning experience.
Yeah. Another start early. Make your mistakes early when it doesn't matter as much.
It doesn't cost as much either.
Well, inflation, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that. Yeah. All right. Next question. How has your formal and informal training shaped your journey?
I think my formal training in college, I was a radio, TV, and film major. All right. So that helped me as a broadcaster, but it didn't help me build my personal wealth. So it's everything that I learned after that, getting, all the classes I took, getting real estate license, all the classes that I took in the self-directed IRA space, getting some certifications. Like it's a couple of certifications. There's something called the CISP, Certified IRA Services Professional, from the American Bankers Association. And also I've had a life and health license. So learning about finance through just the licensing process. And, but I think the highest level of education I got probably was being a mortgage lender and working and a mortgage loan originator and working with people who are getting loans and looking at their tax returns. Like, how are these people? How are they building wealth? Like, what's in their portfolio? And you could see everything. And that was a real eye-opening experience. Everybody owned real estate. That's how they were doing it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. And our final question, what was your biggest mistake and what did you learn?
Biggest, I don't really focus. My biggest mistake, I don't know. I don't know at the top of my head. I could talk about successes, but I can't think of I don't know. I don't.
Well, what about just one of your biggest learnings, like maybe a turning point for you?
Oh, okay. A turning point or something like where I faced an adversity was that was difficult was when we had a bad actor invest who used self-directed IRAs, some through uDirect, some through other custodians, to invest in his deal, and that deal went belly up. And so the thing of it is I knew these people. And everybody were, in this market where I am in Southern California, we all knew these people. And so we had 17 account holders. And so they came to me once this whole thing blew up and said, hey, Kaaren, what do we do? These people, they stole our money. So maybe this is a mistake. So I'm at a RETA conference in DC, and the head of enforcement for FINRA, this woman, that's her job. And FINRA is the enforcement arm for the Securities and Exchange Commission. So her job is head of enforcement. And I say, hey, look, we've got this bad actor. How do these people report it? And she said, well, they file a complaint with the California Department of Business Oversight. So I tell all these people, hey, file a grievance with the California Department of Business Oversight. So they did, and they filed that on everybody, including me. So, and I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, thanks, So,
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was probably a mistake. So, but at the same time, but it was also great because if anybody had any questions about our ethical behavior at uDirect, we were completely exonerated because it started off with an investigation. And so we had to prove to the Department of Business Oversight, that we were not acting as a broker dealer or affecting transactions because, see, we don't sell assets. We're not financial advisors. We're not giving financial advice, and we're not selling assets. So we're not telling you, giving you financial advice, like, hey, you should invest in this thing. So we're exonerated. We don't do that. They've proven great. And so that got wrapped up in a much neater bow than I expected. So then the next thing is I go home and I get my mail and I'm being audited. The business is being audited. All right. So I haven't been through this before. So let's do this. Then I'm personally audited as well. But, no problem. Clean books. Amanda helped me right through my audit. And the auditor told Amanda, tell her she's getting an A+ on her audit. So that was cool. So it was very stressful. It was 10 years ago, very stressful. Like, how is it going to turn out? I have no idea what they're thinking, but I just gave them what I had, all the books, and they said, you're fine.
I remember when our dad got audited.
Oh, man.
He lost some hair on that one.
Oh, it's crazy, man. So then all that's over and everything's cool. Then the next thing is at that time we were in an executive suite, and the receptionist at the first floor calls me and says, hey, Kaaren, the FBI is here and they have a subpoena for you. So they think
it sounds like a really good week.
Yeah, it was right. So they think I'm going to be arrested. It's like, no, it was a subpoena for records because they're trying to take down this very same bad actor and they need a proof. So it was just a subpoena for records. But then I made friends with the FBI guy. We're still friends 10 years later. We're still friends today. And I always hit him up every time we need a speaker for our industry conferences.
Probably some good stories.
Yeah. So that is the biggest, by talking to that woman who's the head of enforcement for FINRA and telling her about this, it really put me through a world of stress, but it also made it very clear and apparent to all these investors who thought I was in cahoots, that no, I wasn't. And of course I wasn't, and completely, cleared the air there. So turned out to be
awesome. And you were just trying to help them go after this guy.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, which we did, and they landed in jail. Okay, they both served jail time.
Wow. No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Kaaren, thank you so much for coming on. If our audience wants to get a hold of you or learn more about self-directed IRAs, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, you see my logo, so it's uDirectIRA.com. And that's the best way because obviously the website just has everything. We have so many blog articles to go that we've researched and gone deep on the kinds of questions that you're asking me today. There's so many different questions with self-directed IRAs. You'd be surprised on how many things come up. And also like what's new. And so you're going to see that on our blog and everything, like our fees are super low and how we work and everything you need to know about uDirect IRAs on our website.
Well, very much enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks. It was a little volleyball. It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast on WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. We hope that this episode has increased your knowledge